All right. Well, here we are then. Everyone, welcome to our virtual meetup. First of all, I would like to start with thanking our sponsors, Euricom and BEL, for making this happen. And for those who don't know BEL Vue, we are a meetup group with the goal to bring the Vue.js community in Belgium together, with organizing meetups, for example. For now, it will be virtual meetups like this one. And for those who don't know me, I'm Sibren, and I am a front-end developer at Euricom, and a core member of BEL Vue. Besides that, I'm also a core member of the World Vue initiative, and this is a little bit the same like BEL Vue, but on global level. So we're trying to bring the Vue community together on global level by organizing meetups, for example. And most recently, I also joined the core team of the Chakra UI Vue, which is really interesting. But for today, it's also going to be really interesting. We have 3 amazing talks. We're going to kick off with Wim with a talk about from WordPress to Jamstack using static site generations. Then we have Thomas with a talk about Cypress end-to-end testing. And to close off, we have Bart with a talk about Save at Work, building a PWA with Vue and Quasar. If you have any questions during a talk, feel free to put them in the chat. We are able to see them. And at the end of each session, we will try to make time. We will make time to answer those questions. We're using StreamYard, so we are able to put the question also on the stream. All right. So let's no longer wait for our first talk. And we will kick off with Wim. Right, I'm going to add him to the stream. Hello, Wim.
Hi, everyone.
I hope you're looking forward to your talk. And with that, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Steven. So hi, everyone. First time for me doing this virtual, so I'm going to start to share my screen. Voila, there we are. So my talk today is going to be the transition from WordPress to Jamstack, but using static site generators. My name is Wim van de Venne. I'm the managing partner of BEL, one of the sponsors. You can find my Twitter handle and my GitLab URL on the slide. I started working with Vue a couple of years ago at Engie as a consultant, and later on at the Flemish government. And at those projects, I really fell in love with Vue, and I started to use it more and more. So that's why I started moving from WordPress to Jamstack. So the transition has been going on. I think it's been going on for some years now. More and more Jamstack websites. WordPress is still powering like 40% of the websites worldwide. It's a great CMS, to be honest, but it's slow. From the moment you start to add some plugins or extra functionality, it starts to get really, really slow. And because it powers like 40% of the websites, it's prone to attacks. So the security isn't what it should be. And there are patches all the time, which then can break your site, for example. On the other hand, we have Jamstack, which is fast, it's more secure, and it's a lot more maintainable, which improves the developer experience. And then on top of that, we're going to use static site generation, which is actually a website generated on build time, which can then be put on a static hosting service, for example, Netlify, Vercel, GitHub Pages, but actually on any FTP server. The pros of static site generation are that it's fast. The hosting is cheap, as it's just static. You don't need any server. You can do AJAX calls, and it's good for SEO. But yeah, one of the biggest cons actually is that every time there's a content change, you have to rebuild your website, which makes it not that great to use for websites with a lot of content changes. This is actually a chart which I took from Dennis Freilink, his GitHub, to show a little bit about the static site generation. So actually you have your data and then combined together with your content and the templates, it's statically generated and put into a website, which is then uploaded to the hosting you want to use. And then users can go to your website and they will be served those files through a CDN. So we're going to use headless WordPress. As you can see it right here, this is the default WordPress. So there's a database and then WordPress is on top of it, which is the CMS, and then we have the website. What we're going to do right now is we're still going to use the database, but we're going to use WordPress as a content management framework. So we're going to use the API, which is actually built into WordPress. And with that API, we can let it talk to an API or website or an IoT device, things like that. The possibilities are endless. So we're going to use WordPress as a content management framework. And as you can see here, the default route for the API, the REST API is /wp-json, is built in WordPress. It's already been there like for the last versions. I don't know by heart which version. You don't have to install anything on top of your default WordPress installation. You can do it with, for example, Gridsome or with Nuxt. Today we're going to use Nuxt, but if you want to do it with Gridsome, you can do it just by simply running command Gridsome create and then the name of your app and then add WordPress. It'll use the WordPress starter kit on top of Gridsome, and then you just have to add your WordPress URL, so the URL of the API, and you can start. Today we will do it with Nuxt. I already did the scaffolding, so I created a new Nuxt project. I took JavaScript as a programming language, Yarn as the package manager, took Tailwind, Axios for Ajax calls, some linting. I selected static site generation to deploy on a static host, for example, Netlify. So actually pretty basic stuff. The steps we're going to do are first the Nuxt setup, then we're going to import WP Nuxt, which is actually a module you can find on the Nuxt modules page. We're going to make sure the post content is dynamic from the post we selected. Then we're going to add some simple SEO, and we're going to optimize it. So let's go over to the live coding. Fingers crossed everything goes according to plan. As you can see right here, everyone who already worked with WordPress knows this screen is the default dashboard of the WordPress admin page. I just created a demo website, imported some demo content. I created some posts as well, just to make sure we have some content. What I did for SEO is I added the Yoast SEO plugin, which is actually the most used WordPress SEO plugin. And then I scaffolded my project, and we have this. So I hope this is big enough. Everybody can read it. This is the default after you scaffold with Tailwind as CSS framework. I just removed all the styling here and only let this as the remainder. So this is the index page. What we're going to do right now is, first we're going to add the WP Nuxt module. So I will add that one. Let me check. So it's just yarn add WP Nuxt. Yarn add WP Nuxt. And then, while this is going on another screen, right here we have the Nuxt config file. And right here we will have to add our configuration for the WordPress block. So right here we have WordPress, and then we have to add our endpoint, which is the URL, which I will just take here. It's this one, And then we are just going to add WP JSON at the end of it. If we click on it, you can see that it's just a REST API, which gives us back some JSON. Gives us back some JSON. What do we have here? I added WP next in the meantime. What do we have here? I added WP next in the meantime. What do we have here? I had some technical issues. I'm sorry about that. So right here, we're back. I added the WP config right here. I added WP next as dependency. Right now, what we can do is in our homepage, I'm going to add the posts from the API, which we can do with the built-in function by next async data. Voila. And we will give it the app parameter. And it'll return the posts, which will be coming from the API we just included. And let's say we're going to add just 10 for now, to add some paging already. So right here we have our posts. What I'll do right now is I'll add just an ordered list. Let's add some margin as well. Then I'll add the list item. So the posts. Voila. Let's try to see if it works. No, it doesn't. So what's going wrong? Post in posts. Yes, we have the ID. Yep. What do we have here? So cannot post of undefined. Maybe I did some typo. app.wp.posts. Yeah, that seems to be right. Maybe it was. Okay. I did some changes in the Nuxt config, but I forgot to add the WP Nuxt module. So let's add it right here. Let's see what it does. Maybe we can already add to start a link with the post title. So let's see, post title, and it should take the rendered title. Still no go. Luckily, we did it like this. So what we just did right here is I just removed the default logo and I took another one, just a random one. But for the rest, it's actually the same. I optimized this as well. So to have a link to the post. And there we are. So right here, you can see there are 4 posts, which are actually these 4 right here. When I click on them, it's just going to open that post into a separate tab. What we want to do right now is, we want to make it dynamic. So we're going to add a file. So for the posts route, and then we're going to take the ID as a variable. Voila. Let's say class as a container, Let's center it. Voila, and then let's add the logo, but with a link back to the home page. So let's go back to the home page. When we click on it, what do we want more? I want to have an H1, which then is the post title, again the rendered one. And then right here, we're going to add the content, which we will do right here. Just put in the entire rendered content as HTML, because we want to make it dynamic and we don't know what HTML is in there. Right here, again, we are going to add the sync data part to fetch the posts. Right here. But instead of gathering all the posts, we want the posts we clicked. So we're passing on the parameters, and I only want the post with ID, the ID from the route. So as you can see here, we pass it on. Voila. Let's forget about styling for a minute. And then on the home page, what we want to do is, instead of going to the original WordPress page, we want to go to the post page. So right here, let's do it like this. Let's remove it. Let's put a Nux link first. Which goes to the post, and then let's take the post ID. This can be removed. Let's see what it does. If we hover right here, you can see it goes to post and then the ID of the post, and when we click on one, the title is broken right now. It's not the post, it's the title. So what went wrong? Let's check very quickly. The post title, the rendered one, yes. The title of undefined, because here we did post this one. There we go. So right now we have the content of the post, which is actually exactly the same as another post. Let's view it. Well, you can see the title, then the image which we put in there, and then the content. It's in there. When we click, we go back to the home page. So we have our dynamic content in there. The third step was going to be the SEO. So we already added the Yoast SEO plugin, which will handle a lot by default. So for example, adding things to the head of the page, but as we are using Next, it's not going to be in there. Let's see here. There we are. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to this step. The only thing I added right here is in the head section. I wanted to add the dynamic title right here, which will then optimize it for SEO. Let's see if that works. We're going, can't resolve the SES loader. Yes, indeed. I added some SCSS right here. And then on top of that, I added an additional plugin, which is the WP REST Yoast Meta plugin, which which adds Yoast data to the REST API. Yoast by default doesn't add everything to the REST API, but this plugin does, which makes it possible to have more info in our head, for example, if we want to share it on social networks. Let's see right here, it's building. Yes, there we are. As you can see here, it's another test post, which is the data that we got back from Yoast. I'll show you here in the Vue DevTools what's actually in it. So when we go here, you can see posts. This is all the Yoast data, so Yoast title, for example, and here, this is what's added by the additional plugin I installed, so the Yoast meta parts. But right here, it's an array of all those meta properties, and we want to add it in there as well to have it like properly. So what we're going to do right here is in the head section, we're going to define an empty array. And then from the post, we're going to get the Yoast metadata. So as you can see right here, Yoast meta. And we're going to loop over it. Let's call it meta. Voila. Let's scroll a bit. Close this one. It'll be easier. And then to the array, we want to add it like this. I want to add the name, but only if it exists. So we're going to add the name. Voila. Let's do it like this for the property as well. And let's do it like this for the content. Voila. And then we have this in our Yoast data. And what we will do right here is add this to the meta part. Let's see what it does. Voila, nothing that much that we can see right here, but when we check our code, we can see it's added to the head of the page right here, which is actually from the WordPress site. So Twitter data, so estimate reading time, 4 minutes, things like that. The featured image is shared, the site name is shared, the canonical URL is shared, things like that, which make it easier to share it on socials. Voila. I think that's it for me for the live coding part. Are there any questions? It didn't go as smooth as I wanted, but we eventually got there.
Yes, well, it was very interesting. I think it went good. And we do have a question from Tristan. Put it up here. It says, I tried WordPress REST API a few months ago, and I gave up because it was really slow, even for a small number of pages. How long is it? How long is the static generation with Nuxt?
I don't know by heart. I should have to check my my deploy logs. I deployed it to Netlify, and it actually went pretty smooth. But I can't tell by heart. But I can check later on, and I can let you know if you want. I think it's, yeah, if you have a lot of posts and a lot of pages, it'll take some time to do the static site generation. But I think after it's built, yeah, there's not a lot which connects to to WordPress anymore, and it's served statically. So it's going to fly, I guess.
All right. I myself also have a question. In the beginning of your talk, you said it was rather cheap to have a Jamstack site hosted. So if I'm correct, I just have to buy a domain name, and that's all I need, right? To have, for example, this blog online.
Yeah, indeed. If you host it on a service like Versal or Netlify or things like that, you only need the domain name, and then you can connect it to the Netlify hosting, and I think that's it, actually.
All right, cool. That's very interesting. Well, Tristan says in the reply, okay, I will have to trust you. Well, we all have to. All right. All right. So
any other questions?
We will take a minute or so, because normally there is a little delay on YouTube and the chat. So,
anyway, I will do my closing slide then. So thank you, everyone. If the questions still come in, I will surely answer them. I want to thank our sponsors again, which are Euricom, Appeal, and BEL Vue, and you can find my Twitter handle on the slide with you.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Wim. Thank you. I think we then go straight ahead into our next talk, which is going to be a talk from Thomas. So I will add him to the stream right now and give him the stage. All right, Thomas.
Hello,
I hope
everybody.
you're ready, but I'm sure you are.
Yes, setting up the screens.
Perfect. So we're going to have a talk about Cypress end-to-end testing, right?
Yes, more and especially about going from basic to advanced testing working with Cypress.
All right, awesome. Then there you go. Enjoy.
Yes, thank you. Just one more thing. All right. So let's go. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to talk about Cypress, more about exactly about basic to advanced testing. Who am I? I'm Thomas de Pauw. I'm a front-end developer at Euricom, and I love Vue. I've been working with it about 1.5 years now, and I'm not going back to anything else. Besides that, I have a passion to automate and optimize my workflow. And as my talk suggests, this is going to be Cypress, as testing, manual testing, is something we don't like to do. So in this talk, our program will be a small intro on what is Cypress, for those who don't know it. Then we'll dive into the project setup strategies. After that, we have a small topic about shortcuts. Those are some advantages of Cypress. We'll touch continuous integration and delivery, and about developer involvement when writing end-to-end tests. And after that, we have some time for Q&A. So first off, what is Cypress? So at its core, it is a JavaScript end-to-end unit and integration testing framework. Those last two make it quite unique. As you can see, you can do the whole testing pyramid with one tool if you want. It is made for everything in the browser. So it suits perfectly for modern web applications, but also for static applications, content sites, and so on. It is developed with developers and QA engineers in mind. And most of all, it's open source and free. Besides that, they also have great documentation that helps you getting started quite quickly. Next to that is an all-in-one test library. This means it has a lot of bundle tools already in it, so no manual setup like sometimes is required with older testing tools. It also supports the known tools that are used for unit testing in the front-end world, like Mocha, Shy, and Sinon. And it also have a versatile set of utility libraries that can be used to manipulate your application while running a test. Then how does it run? So as Cypress runs in the browser, it's actually encapsulated around your application. So this has some great advantages. It runs fully in the browser. I know, I said it before, but it means you don't have to have any external dependencies like web drivers and so on to communicate with browsers, like is the case with Selenium. Because of this, it also has full control of your browser. It has the ability to see all the network traffic going to your application. It can control local storage, cookies, application state, and so on. And besides that, everything is written in JavaScript or TypeScript, meaning as a front-end developer, you can stay within the comfort zone of the languages you already know. Then we have browser support. Recently, the Edge browser Microsoft is now using Edge with Chromium-based engine, so we now have the support of the main used browsers. Internet Explorer is not supported by Cypress and won't be in the near future, as I'm aware of. But that really isn't that a big case. Who wants to support Internet Explorer anyway? But you are also able to add some custom browsers, like example Vivaldi or Brave. Then I said Selenium some couple of times already. Maybe a short touch on why not Selenium. It's mainly because it's slower in the test execution. You also have limited browser control, which forces you in certain ways to access your test. And it is only suited for end-to-end testing. So if you want to do some more integrated testing where you mock out some parts of your application, that's quite hard to do with Selenium. So next up, we'll dive into the project setup strategies. But first things first, before we get started, you have some major decisions. It's language choice. So as I said before, you can type your Cypress tests in JavaScript or in TypeScript. The choice is totally up to you. Now Cypress supports basic transpilation of the TypeScript by default. You only have to add tsconfig if you want to. And if you want to use JavaScript, of course, it works out of the box. At our project, we chose TypeScript as it was better for discoverability for our testers, as they weren't that used to using Mocha or Shy in their assertions. TypeScript helped them a lot in discovering the possibilities they could use. Next to language choice is also the possibility to use standalone or integrated. If you want to run Cypress standalone, it's quite easy. It's typically used if you want to do it after a project is already up and running, or it's an older project where you don't have really a web application, where you actually just take a folder, start your package.json, install Cypress, and get going. Next, alternatively, you can use an integrated approach where you install Cypress next to a web application like Vue. This gives you the benefit that you can access internal components of your application much easier, allowing you to start integration testing of even unit testing of those components in a browser. So now we're going to have a small demo just to have a look on how it looks. So here we have Cypress open with a simple test I wrote using the application of a customer I'm working at the moment. To have some context about the application, it is a wizard to guide you through the registration process to start your own business. It runs inside Cypress, and you can start your test easily by clicking a nice button. This will get things going if nothing fails. Fingers crossed. God. Anyway, we get that. Maybe get back to that later. Oh, no, there he is. standing there all along. The site is slow. Nice. So as you can see, it's running the test. One of the most important things to see is it is interactive. So while a test is running, you see exactly what it's doing. And after it is completed, you can hover with your mouse. If you open developer tools, you can even click elements and see details, how many elements they found, what it yielded, and so on. This is very useful when you want to debug a test, because writing end-to-end tests is one thing, maintaining them is a whole other thing. If you have a quick way of debugging and finding issues or flakiness, what's a common thing sometimes in end-to-end tests, it gets you a long way ahead. So this test basically has a few simple steps. It visits the main page of start page of the wizard. It clicks the cookie banner away because it's in the way, of course. After that, we click a button to go into to start our flow. We want to continue without any authentication, not to remain anonymous. We will fill in our first name, fill in our last name, and that's about it for the simple test. If you want to write some tests rapidly for prototyping purposes, Cypress has a selector playground. This allows you to hover elements and select elements, and it will try to find a unique identifier that you can use to write a test on the page you're now on. This first example of test is written only using this, as you can see about the diverse selectors it uses. So this basic test, how does it look in code? This is about this. So the first step was visiting our main URL. This is on line 2. Notice there's no prefix of the whole URL. This is configured in the Cypress configuration, allowing you to shorten the things that are in code of visiting. The second step is was accepting the cookie bot notice, and then continuing on starting the flow. Then we have a sync point. As this is a Vue application, we have to wait until everything is ready. So you can see a sync point as a kind of a loading indicator for Cypress. If you have an application that is statically rendered and has full page refreshes, Cypress waits automatically before continuing if the page is fully loaded. So next, there was our starting of the flow aanbod, and then we started to fill in some data. So to recap, what did we do here? We used the selector playground to build this test. So this was a fast way to create a test. It only took a few minutes. It was ideal for prototyping. You can start, click elements, and get your flow going. But it has some maintenance issues, and those are the most things we want to tackle in this topic. Is it uses IDs and selectors, as you saw in the hovering of this interactive playground, and it repeats functionality as we filled in our name and we press next and go on and go on. We did it sometimes in different ways. How can we solve the first things of this is automation IDs. Automation IDs are basically data attributes you can put on elements and are solely for automation. How does this look? It can look like this. Data sci is the default that Cypress has in its documentation, but you can choose whatever you want. And for example, for an input, you have my input, or for a button, you can have a button with a functional automation attribute like next. The important part of those automation IDs is that they only change if there's a functional change. They don't change like a CSS or a selector or an ID if there's something totally else changing, like style, but nothing functional. This is also one of the best practices Cypress tries to encourage everybody to. Using those data automation IDs involves fetching them, and we can do this by running a Cypress command. Cypress commands can be added as much as you want. You can customize them and create one for your own. And we created one called getBy. getBy is an extension of the get, where we actually fetch an element using our automation ID, which is data automation ID. With this, we can update our test file, so the basic file we had before, now revamped using automation IDs. So first off, there is one get with an ID. This is because it's a third-party library. It doesn't have automation IDs. It has specifically an ID. So we cannot have an automation ID in place. But for our navigation, as we are a wizard moving through a flow, we made the next button have the same automation ID, meaning we can repeat and use that during the flow. Our input component is from a design system and also have now specific automation IDs in place, which we can fetch. So to recap, what did we solve? We removed the use of IDs and CSS dependencies where possible. This not only makes the test more stable, but it also changes the readability a lot, because creating functional names for your selectors allows you to read the test more easily than having just selectors and so on and so on. So, what now? So what if automation IDs update? And it's possible that they change if functionality change. Or what if someone asks, so, what selectors exist? Can you give me an overview? So the next step in our process would be to centralize our selectors. We want to improve, make this more functional readable and improve the maintainability. So to do this, I have to give you some extra context. So as we had before, we have a cookie control and the start of the flow. And then we have the welcome. So the welcome did have also a next button. And next to that, we had an input where we have our components laid out like this, where we have a next button also inside, and then we have an input component. If you take the component structure of these parts and we put it in one file, like a component selector file, it could look like this. So first off, we had our cookie control. This had an accept button we wanted to use. So we take the selector we use for that and put it here. Then we had an input, which has an input field, and also possibly an error message that we can later use to validate some errors if they occur on the correct order. And we have also a next button. And of course, our sync point, the loading indicator for Cypress, we want to also generate select. If you use this component selector file and we rewrite our same test, it would be looking like this. So first off, we have a component selector that says, get me the cookie control, the accept button, and I want to click that. Next, we want to take the next button, click that. We also want to wait on the sync points. And then last of all, get me the input on the field, get me the input component, give me the input field, and type something in it. So to recap this, the automation IDs are now grouped by their components, and also we improved the readability of our tests. But most of all, we also, this was too fast, we also created an overview of the selectors available in our application. This also giving an overview to the tester what is available to select, but also to see what selectors are actually in use and we have to maintain. But then, what if the component behavior changed? So the next step in this optimization would be to centralize behavior. So it is important to focus on functional component behavior if you want to do this. This also, again, improves the maintainability and is best shown with an example. So, for example, a simple component most people already know is an autocomplete. An autocomplete has several behavioral things like typing in text, waiting for an API response, selecting an item, and clearing the input. These are behaviors you could group so that you can call those in a single method and make sure you don't have to copy paste that behavior in your test every time you want to use, for example, this component. So to further enlighten this on our application, again, some context. So we have had in the demo, we have the input field of a company name. As we have a generic wizard, we have some few layers of components. And the most important part is the red one. This is, for example, a string input. It has a question, it has an input, it has a checkbox that can be checked, and also it has an help button. Those specific components can all have their own behavior, and you can that way build up your components in Cypress as well. In our development environment, this would be looking like this. We have a set of design system components which all have their own selectors and behaviors, application components that use those all together, and then application views like the string input we saw before, which makes it all available to use in a test. One small example of this is, for example, the cookie control. Instead of having the non-typed object that just had all the selectors, we have here a class cookie control, which has an accept button. It also has behavior now, like accept. This is quite simple, but we already had the advantages of this in place in our project, as we need to swap cookie control, and we're able also to automatically do some A/B testing with this in place. It also allows, of course, of the composition. So the accept button, behavior we already had. So if you update our test file, having those behavioral components set up, we have now cookie control.accept instead of going from the component selectors. Next up, we have a navigation that says start aanbod. And filling in data is now reduced to a method fill. So depending on what's behind that, if it's just an input, a radio button, or whatever, it is able to handle this. As this example shows, we had a checkbox allowing it to have an optional value, which now is allowed to be data-driven. So to recap, we abstracted the behavior of our components in separate classes. We can now handle easily one-time behavior update. We can perform one-time behavior updates. So if an internal component changes and you need to change the behavior, an automated test fills something in, selects something, whatever, it is able to do this at one place, not all over the tests. And you also have an insight of breaking changes. If you are using TypeScript, then you can easily find all the references of one specific function of a component, which also allows you to see what is going to break if you are going to update that. So what's next? So after this, if you have done all that work of supporting that, there is something you can do, and that's called data-driven end-to-end testing. So at our project, we are now at that stage that we run those wizardy-like forms by giving our automation framing just a set of data, and he fills it in. It's great. The testers love it a lot. And it also keeps our maintenance cost of those tests very low. So what to choose for all the options that we now have? Just to clarify, we have just a basic option. That's the first one we have. But I wouldn't suggest the one using the playground selectors. Always go with automation IDs. The second option is to centralize your selectors. So centralize those automation IDs used in tests. And the third option we talked about was centralize the behavior. So what you want to choose is also based on several facts. The scale of your application is also very important. You have to think about the costs of implementing centralized behavior if you're not going to have components that are very reusable. So your component architecture is also something to keep in mind to choose one of those approaches. And also application flow. If you have an application that doesn't really have a flow that's very repeatable, it's also not always a good idea to take the behavior or to even go to data-driven testing. But anyway, the centralized selector approach is always a good starting point. As we have everything at one place, it's very easy to migrate to the next step. That's also a thing we did. We waited until the need was there to do it. Now we're going to talk about shortcuts. So shortcuts. What? Yes, Cypress helps us. Cypress helps us to reduce time when running tests. It allows us to reach hard-to-test places in an easier way using shortcuts. And using the shortcuts, it also helps you to keep focus. So basically saying, use the power of Cypress over the browser to cut corners in your application. One of those examples are application login. Not every test has to go to the login form every time and again and again. You can mimic the login API flow. If you use Identity Server, you can do that even using requests on the Cypress side. You can preset cookies if you have some special cookie for testing purposes. But most of all, not every test should log in through the UI. Next to that, you can also do API mocking. This allows you to test your API responses. Yeah, your application, how does it direct to 400? How does it direct to 500? And so on. Those are hard to reach places to test normally or even automated. But using the mocking of Cypress, as it is run all over your application, it is very easy to do. You can also decouple your API with fixtures. Those are pre-created responses that you can use to mimic a certain situation of your application. This can also be easy if you have to have, like us, a wizard with 100 steps, and at the end you want to see something with specific visuals or specific logic. You can mimic all those. You can create a fixture, skipping everything of those steps and just going to the core of you want to test on that page. Testing feature toggles is also one thing you can do. If you have a feature toggle system in place that communicates with your application through an API, you can also mock that. Next is also state manipulation. If you have a Vue of Angular or React application that has something of Redux store or Vux or NGRX, you can call actions, mutations, and even prepare application state to start your test. Preloading state is also a possibility to debug certain cases or to prevent some cases to occur again when they occurred in the past. So, summing this all up, you can take a lot of shortcuts. That's very important if you want to reduce your runtime of your tests and also keep them focused. Next, we'll talk about CI/CD. So the basics in my package.json, what you always have is the pretest CI. It's a very easy script that runs the clean CI and the Cypress verify. Cypress verify just makes sure that Cypress is installed correctly, and this is a good idea to run on a continuous integration server, as it mostly has to install it every time. The clean CI just removes all reports, and the tests will run the tests in Cypress on a headless Chrome if you want to. So we have some run options. how to run those CI/CD. You can run them self-contained, meaning you run Cypress against, for example, a .NET Core application you spin up inside your build pipelines. This is very useful if you want to run it in pull request builds when nothing is deployed yet, and to verify that especially your happy cases are still working. And of course, you can also run against deployed environment. That's example are development and acceptance and production. So to further go into self-contained, I can run your application directly in the pipeline, and Cypress runs against an hosted instance. So ideal for pull request flows, works on hosted pipelines, but for complex applications, it could require a hybrid setup. What do I mean with a hybrid setup? If you are using a lot of microservices, it is kind of hard to spin up all those microservices in a pull request pipeline to let your UI function. So in most cases, or in our case, we let it connect to the development APIs. If you're using a full Docker environment, you could do it, and that's a whole other story. Then for parallelization, if you have a lot of Cypress tests and you have to run them one by one, it can take a lot of time. Even Cypress is fast, it's faster than Selenium, but running UI tests is generally slow compared to unit tests. You have some options to do this. You can use the Cypress dashboard. This is a paid feature of Cypress. I haven't used it before, but it looked great. Go check it out. Or you can set up a multi-job pipelines. So how did we do that for our parallelization? This is our package in JSON again. And as you can see, we have 3 test commands which specifies a specific spec path. So if you group your tests within Cypress in specific folders, you can do this based on functionality or features. It also keeps your structure a little bit clean, but you can also then create commands for that specific set. So what are the benefits if you're going to start splitting those folders? It limits the duration of one test suite. If you pick out one feature to run in one command, it will tell you an error in one and only that set, and it reduces the limitation of one big suite. It also allows for partial runs. If only one small portion fails, it's easier to rerun, so it scopes also your failures. And besides that, splitting up allows you to keep a functional overview. So with that in mind, we created a lot of commands, split it on a lot of levels depending on the duration of some tests, and it gave us a nice scale up that looked like this in DevOps. Here we run 177 tests in about 28 minutes, and this is actually our full regression set. So next point was developer involvement. I find it very important part of the automation testing, and I don't think I see it enough, but test-aware development. If you're a developer and you write code, always ask yourself, how are we going to test this and how are we going to automate this? Writing an application is easy. Making it maintainable is a little bit harder, but making it automated testable is just a next step. In other words, be lazy, automate instead of manual testing. Even if it's just to make your testers a little bit more happy, you can go faster through production and have smaller iterations in the end. And collaboration is key. In our approach, the development team did the setup of the support framework that the testers use, and they write tests using our automated system. So this is a collaboration between us. When components change, we update the support for components, we update the behaviors that change. As we know, in-depth technical stuff about the application that allows us to take shortcuts, that is unable to find someone that doesn't know the code of your app. So keep that in mind. So thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them now.
All right, Thomas, awesome. That was a great talk. I'm looking forward to see more tests written by everyone. So we do have 2 questions. So let's start with this one from Tristan. He writes, since Cypress does not support Safari, what should we use for the soon-to-be EA browser?
Yeah, it depends what you want to use Cypress for. We mainly use it to check the functional integrity of our application. If it comes to visual regression testing, we use Selenium in combination with browser stack. This only runs the happy flow, not a full regression set, but this does necessary measuring points to be comfortable releasing.
All right. So another question from Tristan. Can we use Cypress to do performance tests to check if we have good core web vitals?
If you have a lot of server power at your disposal, I do think you can. You can spin up the parallel tests on as many servers, or if you use the hosted environments of DevOps, as many as you have hosted environments. But I would think performance tests on API level could give you also some more information about those APIs, giving your application all its data, as those are sometimes or mostly bottlenecks in my experience.
All right. I have one last question. What is the learning curve of Cypress?
Very low. If you are a front-end developer and you already know JavaScript or TypeScript, and you have written some unit tests in Mocha, Shy, or Jest, then the step is not that big. You write them mostly in the same way. You have the same assertion libraries at your disposal, and you get going quite quickly. You don't have to learn another language. You just have to read the awesome documentation of Cypress to get you started.
All right, that sounds great. Like Janu says, amazing talk, and thank you for being here.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to remove Thomas, and we will go to our last talk of today, and it will be a talk from Bart. I'm going to add him right to the stream right now, so he can share his screen instead of Thomas. All right. So hello, Bart.
Hello.
Glad you made it. Looking forward to your talk. It's going to be interesting, a little bit different than the 2 previous talks. But yeah, I will say share your screen and the stage is yours. Good luck.
Right.
Yeah, I will add it to the stream.
Okay. Yeah, it's not. So I'm Bart. I'm a lead developer for.
Sorry, Bart. I'm just going to just say briefly. We're looking at your at the wrong screen, I think, because we're seeing your speaker's notes.
Okay. It's because the PowerPoint is. Let's try again.
Right. Yeah, no worries. get it working.
So, yeah, just leave it like this then.
Okay.
So I'm a lead developer of Procos Group. So we're a company in Antwerp, and we also have a small division in Lisbon and also in the Netherlands. So we are not a typical IT company, or we're not a typical consultancy company. So our slogan is Space Software and Soul. So we have two divisions in our company. So we have part of the company is doing space design, which means designing office spaces. And the other part is doing the software. So the space designers, they do like a full track of doing the requirements or making the plans and doing the execution. So we have a lot of clients who are asking our company to renovate their office spaces. So one part of the company is involved in that. And the other part is doing software. And we're doing software also related to workplace management and facility management. So it's a bit of a niche market. So we have a few own products, but we also develop on a platform that's called Archibus. So that's an American platform for facility management software. So let's see what toolkit we have. So a year ago, we started a new project, which is called Save at Work. And a few of our clients were asking us to have a tool for a safe return to the office. So people could make a reservation of an office seat. And so we can also do the contact tracing who is going to the office. If someone is sick, you can do the contact tracing. Also, the cleaning can see which seats have been used each day. So it's like a full closing the loop application we created. We didn't use the Archibus framework, but we started to develop our own platform for it, and also using Vue for the front end. Later on, this will evolve to what we call smart at work. So when this pandemic is over, I think a lot of the principles we use today will stay, like you work from home. Sometimes you go to the office, so then you have meetings. So the way we work will change. So part of the platform will stay and will evolve later. So the smart at work will be more smarter. So it means we will use AI and stuff, or IoT sensors to provide a good working space experience for end users. The application now, the Save at Work, is being used by several companies now. So these are the major companies, well-known companies that use Save at Work. So the technology we use from the backend, we always use Java, where our environment always is Java. So the backend is Spring Boot. And we have just a relational database, which is SQL Server. For the front end, since we are very customer driven, it means we have to react very fast for questions people have, or customers have. So we want a platform for fast development. We already decided to have a very mobile-friendly and user-friendly interface, so easy to use, very so people could have a very easy way to book a workplace and use their phone for it. We always are very pragmatic in adapting new technologies. So we use what we know, and if we have a really need for new technology, we will adapt it. But we're not going to use microservices, and because it's a hype, and we're always pragmatic in the way we develop. We have been looking at different front-end technologies and have been using React a bit and also tried Angular. But for me, the most natural environment is Vue. So that's also for everyone here. And then we looked at some component libraries. And we thought Vuetify and Quasar are most mature. But then our preference was Quasar. What is Quasar? It's more than just a UI component library. It also has this grid system layout style you can find in other frameworks. But it also has CLI, and you can build your application for different targets. So it's all built in. If you want, you can develop a Quasar app and then compile it as a single page app, or you can compile it as a progressive web app, or even a mobile app using Capacity or something else, or you can use an Electron. You can create an Electron application. It also has excellent documentation, and I used very good tutorials. So there are some videos by Danny Connell, which are very good to learn Quasar. Maybe we can have a look to the Quasar website. So you can see the documentation is very good. So you have the Quasar CLI. So you don't have to use it, but it's much easier if you use the Quasar CLI. So you can start a project also using the Quasar CLI. So what's in there? So you have the CLI. You have some styling and identity. So there are some classes you can use, predefined classes to give your styling. So you don't have to create your own CSS. There's some standard classes you can use. There's also some classes for layout and grid, so you can use the flex grid easily with styles. And then you have the Vue components. So all the major component types you find in other libraries, you can find it here. So there's a lot. Let's see, for a button. So Documentation is really excellent for in Quasar. So you can see how to install it, then how to use it. So you have the standard buttons, and then you can also see how it is coded. So you can see different types of buttons. You can render or design it the way you want. So you can have a color or with an icon. And if you see something you like, you just open the code, and then you can cut and paste if you want to start using Quasar easily to use the examples here. So you can see there's a lot different possibility and flexibility in the components. So you're not very limited in the way it's being used. And then at the end, you always have the API where you can see all the properties and the methods you can use. So that's always very interesting to see that the documentation is very good, and it's also very decisive to, if you want to make a choice in a library, look at the documentation. If it's excellent, then it's always very attractive. So then we decided to use a progressive web app. So one of the things we noticed that corporate companies don't like always that personnel have mobile apps be installed. Then some people are very hesitant to install mobile apps. And then you have IT that wants to approve what is installed on people's mobile phones and stuff. So you don't have to register also the app on the Apple Store or the Play Store. So it's a way to develop fast something that looks and has the same behavior as a mobile app, but it's easier to deploy and easier to develop. So the progressive web app is just almost the same as the single page app. It only has one file, which is the service worker, which takes care that you have a progressive web app, and has some possibility that you can also use it offline and stuff, and that data that can be cached. But the rest of if you see the mobile app or the shortcut, you don't really see a much difference with a real mobile app. If you have a very simple application, then a progressive web app is really something you can try. There are some disadvantages maybe. So if your app becomes very big, it can get slower and take longer to load. It doesn't have access to contacts or the agenda like a real native app. And what's also important for some is that you don't have the mobile push notifications on iOS. So it's supported on Android, but it's not supported on the Apple iOS platform. There are other libraries we use, like eCharts for charting, and some other things we use for when we use QR codes or for the plans we use. I can show you a little video So that's the first version we created. After 2 months of work, we got this.
In this short video, we will show you how you can use the Safe at Work application to reserve a workstation quickly and easily. After you sign in, you instantly see the reservations you already have. First, let's make a new one. Tap on the plus sign and select the date. Next, you can swipe through the available buildings and see for each floor how many seats are available. After you've selected a floor, the floor plan is presented with colored dots on every desk. Find yourself a green one that you like and select it. Confirm your selection and that's it. The desk is yours. Behind the blue info signs are the guidelines for the building you selected. These guidelines contain useful information about the building, like how the new circulation patterns are organized. When you arrive at the desk you reserved, you can confirm your arrival by scanning the Safe at Work QR code. This will not only tell the system you've arrived, the system will tell you you've found the right desk. Based on the reservations and the QR scans, the cleaning team knows which workstations need to be cleaned and disinfected, making sure the office is safe for the people that will come in tomorrow.
So that's the first version of the app we created. So the floor plans are SVGs. So we extract SVGs from AutoCAD files most of the times. And then we have a zoom in and zoom out function to click on the dots. Okay, let's maybe have a look at the background. So you have seen the front end, the end user front end experience, and at the back end, the manager can also define the buildings, floors, all the workstations, the work seats can be defined here with a certain category or something, and they can also be assigned to a business unit or a team. So only people from that team can make a reservation for certain seats. You can see. If it's loaded. Okay. So you can see here the floor plans, and then you can see the type of workstations here. We have a standard workstation, or some workstations here have a second screen. And then you can highlight also the floor plans by business unit and by team. And then you can print out the QR labels. So the QR labels are on every seat has its own QR label. And then let's see, for selecting certain seat. So you can define different phases, so different time periods where the administrator can say which seats can be reserved or not. So when there's a pandemic, you have social distancing, so then you select which seats can be reserved. So you can just click on a dot to make it not available or to make it available. So like here, you can say, okay, this you can only make reservations for these 2 seats. And then you have some reporting that on the floor plans that you can see which seats are available and which are not. And then maybe a booking report. So you can see here. So these are e-charts that display the data. Okay, time is already running. For some code, I would like to share a new project I'm working on. So this is a new module we're creating that is called Service Desk. So people can report problems or request something for all kind of things, like if there's something broken or you have a request, you can make the request here. So let's see how it looks like. So I have this screen here with the request I already made, and then I can create a request here or select the location first, or I can scan the QR code and then make the request. So the QR code can be either a room or a workstation, or it can also be an equipment. So I always try to make a design that also works for the mobile app. So what you can see here is like a desktop screen, but if you make it smaller, you can see that some layout is changing. So you can have a table design, and if the screen is smaller, then you can have a different design for the end user who's using the mobile phone. So you can select the location. It's a bit slow. So you can see this is my the person's workstation. If it's assigned, there are already some requests made here for that location. So then you can see, or maybe someone else already made the request. And then you can see some visuals to maybe if it's too cold or too hot, or you want some service like a key card or other services, or there's a problem with some maintenance or something, then you can click here. And then you end up here in the request screen. So maybe there's some problem here. And then you can also attach some pictures or files. So you can pick some files here and also capture a screen. So if you have a problem, you can just take a picture with your mobile phone and then upload it with the ticket. So maybe we can see here the component we use is the Quasar uploader. So let's have a look. So you look for a component, and then you can see some examples how it is used. And if you find something, you just can copy and paste it. And then you also have the API of this component and some server-side examples. So, so if this component I like, then I will use it. So it's called the Quasar Uploader. And you have some attributes here, and also a ref, so you can use also some methods in your JavaScript. I also use a webcam, so there's a component for capturing the screen. So standard, you can see this uploader, and using templates you can modify a bit how it looks. And then it just uses all the standard Quasar buttons, you can see. So there's a separate component for the webcam. So when it finishes, so you can also choose using the refs, you can trigger the upload functionality, and when you finish, it's just emit the event for finish. Let's have a look at the webcam. So it's a standard component of Vue we're using, the Vue webcam. And so I don't know if it will work. So then you can capture it, and then you see it here as a capture. If you see the string, so when it does the capture, it has this base64 string it returns. But for our upload, let's see. The upload component I'm using here, it requires that you have a file. So let's see how you can convert this string, which you can use as a source in an image or something, and transform it in a file. So the URL is really the string you have seen. And what you can do is just use the fetch command to make it the stream. And from the stream, you can create like the blob. And this blob you can use to create a JavaScript file object. And then you can add it to the uploader as a file. So then we can see here the file of the capturing we did. And then you upload it and just finish it. And then you see it, the ticket here at the top. And then you can also just download it. And that was just a small part of there's not a lot of time, so it's just a part of the code I just want to show you. So are there, let's see if there are questions.
Oh, I just got a message. I'm muted, so I will go again with the question from Tristan. He has a question. What kind of offline operations do you manage by the PWA? What happens if I select a seat that has been reserved while I was offline?
Yeah, for now, well, it's possible to use some offline management. For now, we always expect people to be online. So if we only use like offline, if you can see your reservations or something, but if you really make the action of making a reservation, you have to be online. It's, in theory, it should be possible also to cache that, and then when you go online to create a reservation. But when there's a conflict, the server will return an error that someone else already has the seat. So.
All right, okay. Tristan has another question. I think it's related to the Vue web camera. Any Vue packages for image processing, CSS filtering, or creation applications that you used or maybe recommend, I think?
Yeah, so this is the list of additional plugins or libraries we use. So, so the webcam, we just have the Vue webcam, the image upload resize we can use. We're going to use for scanning the QR code, we have a library. The pen zoom we use for zoom in and zoom out for the floor plans. And e-charts we use for charting.
All right, cool. I also have a question, small question about Quasar. It seems like it really speed up the developments, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, the application I'm working on now, it's I started 2 weeks ago, so that's a result now of 2 weeks. So that's, I think it's nice. So we always try to be very responsive to requests of customers. So we're not like some other companies that we can have like a year to create something. We always take it step by step. So for fast prototyping, I think it's very good or very powerful. But then we always extend it later with other features, and it will grow over time.
All right, very interesting. I really loved how and why you used certain frameworks, certain packages. Thank you, really thank you for this talk. And before we're ending this meetup, I will going through a few small announcements. So again, Bart, thank you very much.
Okay.
So just going to try and share my screen. The few announcements I have are mainly very interesting events that will happen in the future. The first one is Refactor. It's a event hosted on the 31st of March by Euricom, Access, and Painting with Lights. It is a software development conference, not only Vue.js, with a the lineup is filled with very interesting speakers. As you can see here, there's a few highlighted speakers. Me myself will also give a talk about Chakra UI Vue on there. One of the nice things about this is that it's free, but you can buy tickets or donate, and all the money will go to an initiative called BEDNet. It's an initiative to have sick children staying connected with their classmates and so on. So this one is on the 31st of March. You can find it at refactor.be. The next upcoming event is one of Worldview. As I said in the beginning, I am a core member of Worldview, and we are planning our next meetup, next summit. It's going to be our first summit, and it will be global with speakers from America, for example, Europe, maybe Africa, maybe Asia, and I'd say maybe because we are still looking for speakers. So if you're interested in giving a talk about Vue.js related, like Vue 3 or something, please reach out to us and I can send you the call for papers. And then on the end of that, we also with BEL Vue will be thinking about hosting our next event, maybe at the end of June. And if you are inspired by those 3 speakers here and you want to give a talk at our next event, please reach out to us. I thank you a lot for being here, and I hope I will see you all next time. All right, thank you.